It started with whispers. Not the dramatic, heart-stopping kind. No slamming doors or screaming matches. Just a subtle shift, like a draft sneaking through the window you forgot to shut. A chill you don't notice until your whole body feels cold. He'd started coming home later than usual. Said work was demanding. Then it was car trouble. Then it was mom needed help with something. His excuses wore different clothes every day, but they all walked the same path, away from me. I wasn't naive. Not anymore. I'd spent the first few years of our marriage forgiving him before he even asked. Making space where he left none. Telling myself, this is what love looks like when life gets hard. But this wasn't hard. This was hollow. It was small things at first. He stopped texting back during the day. Stopped saying goodnight. I'd hear him in the kitchen whispering into his phone. Then I'd hear her voice through the speaker, his mother. Always her. I tried to believe it was just family concern. She was aging, maybe she needed more help. But every conversation between them ended with a request. Every visit left us lighter, in groceries, in patience, in peace. I never disliked his mother. Not at first. But she never liked me. That much was clear. She'd once told me, as I set the table for Thanksgiving, that I wasn't built for longevity. That her son needed someone who knew her place. I laughed it off. Then told my reflection in the bathroom mirror later that night that she didn't mean it. But she did. She always meant it. And so did he, apparently. It was a rainy Tuesday when I opened our joint savings account to check on a pending payment. I had been budgeting carefully for weeks, building a small reserve to finally renovate the kitchen, something we'd talked about since the day we moved in. I had spreadsheets. Plans. Vision boards. What I saw instead was a balance so low it made me blink twice. I refreshed the page. Then again. Then I stared. For transactions, back to back. Large withdrawals. All marked electronic transfer. The last one had happened just 2 days ago. I froze. It wasn't just the number that crushed me. It was the silence behind it. No mention. No heads up. Not even a careless, casual lie. Just, gone. I waited for him that evening. He walked in carrying takeout and scrolling on his phone like it was any other night. He kissed me on the cheek and asked if I wanted soy sauce. I didn't answer. He looked up. What's wrong? I asked him where the savings had gone. His face didn't even flicker with guilt. He just sighed, like I was asking about something unimportant. Mom needed help, he said, setting the food on the table. It's not a big deal. She needed all of it? She had some hospital bills, and some other things. Look, it's not your money anyway. I've been the one working full-time. I stared at him. I've been working too. Yeah, but your job is part-time. It's not serious. Not serious. Like the hours I spent managing our home, balancing our budget, preparing meals, filing his insurance claims, all just part of some hobby. Like I was a placeholder. Don't be dramatic, he added, reaching for chopsticks. She's my mother. And I was his wife. At least, I thought I was. But in that moment, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit. I was married to a man who believed I was temporary. And people don't protect what they see as disposable. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside him in bed, watching the ceiling fan spin shadows across the walls, wondering how long he'd been planning it. Or worse, if it hadn't even taken planning. If it was just instinct for him, something he did without thinking twice. At 3 a.m., I got up and opened my laptop. I pulled up every file I could find: bank statements, tax records, mortgage documents. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Just proof, maybe, that I hadn't imagined everything we built together. I needed to believe I existed in the paperwork somewhere. That I wasn't just a ghost floating through the margins of his life. That's when I opened the deed. We bought the house 5 years ago. We were still newly married. Still talking about kids, still laughing over burnt pancakes. I remembered the day we closed on it, how we stood on the porch holding the keys and he told me, "This is our foundation. We'll build everything on top of this." Except he never put my name on it. I stared at the scanned document in disbelief. One name. His. Not our house. His. And I hadn't even noticed. I was too busy sanding cabinets and painting rooms and planting flowers in the front yard to realize I wasn't on the deed. I'd trusted him. I was building a life. He was holding the title. I dug deeper. The refinancing he did last year? The paperwork had gone through during a week I was visiting my sister. I remembered him telling me it was routine, just signing some forms to lock in a lower rate. I'd believed him. Of course I had. Why wouldn't I? But there it was, a refinance, a bigger loan, and still no mention of me. Every signature on those forms was his alone. He had secured the loan against the house, my home, but I had no legal claim to it. If he wanted to sell it tomorrow, I couldn't stop him. If he wanted to kick me out, he didn't even need a lawyer. I sat there at the kitchen table as dawn crept through the blinds, and for the first time in years, I felt like I didn't live in my own life. I was just visiting. Just borrowing space in someone else's world. And that someone? Didn't even flinch when he emptied our savings. I thought of the phone calls. His mother's voice in the background. The way he always whispered when she called, like he didn't want me to hear the real conversation. It all made sense now. She'd always said I wasn't good enough. That I was too soft. Too independent. That her son needed someone who respected tradition. Apparently, to them, tradition meant I stayed quiet while they built a future on my back. But I wasn't going to stay quiet anymore. I printed every document. Highlighted every missing signature. I made a folder, a thick, tabbed one that looked like something a lawyer would carry. Then I placed it gently in the center of the kitchen table. When he woke up and wandered in, scratching his head and yawning, I didn't say anything. I just looked at him. He looked at the folder. "What's all this?" I said only one word. "Proof." And then I walked away. Because I didn't need him to understand, not yet. I needed him to feel what it was like to have the floor shift under him. He had treated me like I was lucky to be part of his life. But soon, he'd learn what it meant when I started taking my life back. I didn't scream. I didn't throw his things out the window or slash his tires or demand he sleep on the couch. That would have made it easier for him, to play the victim, to call me emotional, to turn my fury into a flaw. No. I chose silence. Silence was sharper. More dangerous. While he went about his days as if nothing had happened, I made appointments. I walked into a law office on a gray Thursday afternoon, one of those generic glass buildings where everyone wears navy blue and speaks in soft, strategic tones. The receptionist barely looked up as she handed me a clipboard. I filled out the form with steady hands, despite the storm inside me. 15 minutes later, I sat across from a woman named Andrea. Middle-aged, no nonsense, with thin glasses and a tone that said she'd seen it all and won most of it. I handed her the folder I'd compiled. She flipped through it, page by page, her eyes narrowing as she read. When she finally looked up, she didn't ask if I was okay. She asked, "Do you want to stay married to him?" I blinked. She said, "Because this doesn't have to be about divorce. It can be about power. About options." I nodded slowly. "I don't know yet. I want to protect myself. Then we'll start there." She explained everything, what I could do, what I couldn't. How marital property laws worked in our state. How certain assets could be restructured. How his recent actions could be interpreted in court, especially the hidden withdrawals, the sole ownership, the refinancing behind my back. But the most interesting thing, she said, tapping a document with her pen, is the deed. What about it? He never added you. That's bad for you, on the surface. But good for us, because that makes it clear he considered the house his separate property. Which means we can argue the investments you made into the home came from shared assets, not joint ownership. And that helps me how? It gives us leverage, she said. And leverage is everything. She leaned in slightly. Now, does he know you've been researching this? I shook my head. Good, she said. Don't tell him yet. And just like that, I had an ally. I left the office lighter than I had felt in weeks. Not happy, just certain. Certainty is powerful. It's the feeling of walking barefoot but knowing where every stone is. Back at home, he was watching TV. I asked if he'd be out late that week, a casual question. He mumbled something about helping his mother figure out a new savings plan. The irony nearly made me laugh out loud. That night, I opened the scanned deed again. There was a box labeled Add Co-Owner in small print on the title amendment form. All it required was a new deed draft and notarization. If I could catch him at the right time, maybe during tax season, maybe during a refinancing offer, I could offer to help with the paperwork. People like him never read the fine print. But even if I didn't get the signature, Andrea had already started preparing an alternate path. We had options. We had time. I had her. And most importantly, I had me. He thought he'd drained me. But what he didn't understand was that women like me don't go dry. We become rivers underground, quiet, powerful, unstoppable. He took the savings. But I was about to take everything he thought was his. Not with noise. With paper. He had no idea. That was the thing about men like him. They never looked twice at paperwork unless it benefited them. He signed things in passing, barely glancing. Assumed every folder I handed him was a bill to pay, a tax document to approve, a favor to finish. That's how I got him. It started with the refinance offer. Andrea had suggested it. Banks are still pushing lower rates. Use that. Say you're trying to help him save money. Play the loyal wife. So I did. I brought him the new lender paperwork on a Sunday morning, right as he was finishing his coffee and scrolling through his phone. I slid the folder across the table with a smile. You know how you've been saying we need to tighten up finances? I ran some numbers. He raised an eyebrow. Really? Lower monthly payment, better long-term deal, I said. I even called the bank myself. They said if we get the deed updated during the process, it'll make future equity loans easier. Updated how? They said both our names should be on it for tax purposes. Just a formality. He shrugged. All right, whatever. As long as it saves me money. And just like that, he signed. Andrea had prepared the draft deed ahead of time. The form wasn't forged. It wasn't hidden. It was simply strategic. Everything was legal. Everything was traceable. He had signed it with his own hand, on his own time. I had the document notarized the next day. A week later, I received the registered deed in the mail. Both our names. Joint ownership. But more importantly, his was no longer the only one. I stared at the embossed seal on the paper and felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Not triumph. Just a quiet reclaiming. Like dusting off something sacred that had been buried for years. He still didn't know. And I wasn't going to tell him yet. Instead, I moved quietly. I called the insurance company and updated the homeowner's file. I restructured the emergency contact list. I contacted the utilities and placed myself as the secondary account holder. Every step tightened the net, and every step was mine to make now. I didn't even need his permission. Later that week, I changed the locks. He had mentioned taking his mother to her weekly doctor's appointment, and I knew I'd have at least 2 hours. I scheduled a locksmith the moment the garage door closed behind him. He didn't even take notice that I didn't kiss him goodbye. The locksmith was fast, efficient. He didn't ask questions, just complimented the neighborhood and whistled while he worked. By the time he left, the doors had new keys, new codes, new protections. And I had a drawer full of everything he thought he controlled. The key fob, the signed deed, the notarized papers, the control he used to wave in my face, all of it now sat quietly in a folder I labeled mine. When he came home, he didn't notice at first. He walked through the garage and dumped groceries on the counter. I offered him tea. We spoke about nothing. But that night, when he stepped outside to grab his briefcase from the car and tried the front door, it didn't open. I stood inside and watched him twist the handle twice before ringing the bell. I opened the door slowly, calmly. "What's wrong?" I asked. He held up the old key. "Why doesn't this work?" I smiled. "Oh. I had the locks changed." "Why?" "Because it's my house too now." He stared at me, and for the first time in years, I saw uncertainty in his eyes. Real, raw uncertainty. "You didn't think I'd just let you decide everything, did you?" I closed the door. Not all the way. Just enough to let him wonder what else I'd changed. He didn't knock again. Instead, he stood on the porch with that stunned, boyish confusion, the kind men wear when they've never been told no and suddenly meet the full weight of it. His lips parted like he was going to speak, but he didn't. I left the door cracked just enough to remind him he no longer had full access. Eventually, he pushed it open and stepped inside. "You changed the locks," he said again, like repetition might give him authority. I nodded. "Yes." He laughed, but it was hollow. "You think this is funny?" "No," I said. "I think this is overdue." He dropped his bag on the floor. "This is still my house." I walked past him and picked it up. "It's ours now. You signed the documents, remember? Tax purposes." His face darkened. "You tricked me? I gave you paperwork. You signed it. You've done it to me for years." He paced the living room, arms crossed, breathing heavier. "So what? You're trying to take everything now? Is that the game?" I shook my head. "No. I'm trying to take something. Anything. After you gave everything to your mother without asking me." He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him time. "I saw the transactions," I said. "Every dollar. Our savings, gone. No warning. No discussion. Just gone." She needed it. And I needed a partner. But I guess we don't always get what we need, do we? He threw up his hands. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's just money." "No," I said, stepping closer. "It was our future. Our plans. That kitchen remodel we talked about? The emergency fund? You spent it behind my back. And then you had the nerve to say I don't have a real job. That it's your money." He didn't answer. "You don't see me as your equal," I continued. "You never did. You just saw me as convenient. Someone to cook, to smile for the family pictures, to be quiet when the decisions were made." "That's not true." "Then why did you put everything in your name? Why did you make financial decisions that affected both of us, without even telling me?" He looked away. I softened, but not in the way he wanted. "I'm not trying to destroy you," I said. "I'm just done living like I don't exist." He sat down on the couch, silent. For the first time, he looked small. And I realized something that caught me by surprise. I didn't hate him. I pitied him. Because even now, in this quiet war of consequences, he still believed he was in control. That this was some argument we'd get over. That I'd cry, and he'd pat my head, and we'd move on. But that wasn't happening. Not this time. Because I had the deed now. I had the keys. I had the knowledge he never expected me to find. He finally spoke, voice low. So what now? Are you going to leave? I looked at him for a long moment. No, I said softly. You are. He blinked. You can pack what you need tonight. I won't stop you. But I've already spoken to an attorney. The paperwork is in motion. I'm not kicking you out. I'm just reclaiming the space you forgot I helped build. He stared at me, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. And maybe he was. Because the woman he married, the quiet, agreeable girl who bent every time he leaned too hard, she was gone. In her place stood someone who knew how to take her name back. One form at a time. He left the next morning. Not with drama. Not with shouting. Just the hollow shuffle of cardboard boxes down the steps and a car trunk packed with clothes that no longer mattered. He didn't say goodbye. I didn't ask him to. When the front door clicked shut behind him for the last time, I stood in the foyer and listened to the silence. It didn't feel empty. It felt mine. I didn't cry. I thought I might. But the tears had already been shed, months ago, in silence, in bed, in the kitchen at 2 a.m. when I realized I was sleeping beside someone who saw me as an accessory instead of a partner. Now, I didn't feel loss. I felt return. I made tea. Not because I needed it, but because I could. I sat by the window in the kitchen, the one we were supposed to remodel. I opened the folder with the deed, still crisp and official. My name stared back at me in ink and permanence. Not just his anymore. Ours, but really, mine now. He would never undo that. Andrea had walked me through every step. The financial transfers. The property title corrections. The separation of assets. I didn't have to destroy him. I didn't want to. I just wanted my freedom back, and I had it, not with screaming matches or ultimatums, but with paper. With proof. With patience. I told his mother nothing. She called a few days later, pretending not to know what had happened. She asked if he left because I made things difficult. I let her talk. Then I told her, I hope you enjoy the savings. He paid for it with our future. She hung up. I didn't call back. I repainted the living room the next week. A deep, earthy green. Calming. Mature. I moved the couch to the other wall and donated the dining set we picked out together. I bought a second-hand bookshelf and filled it with the books I hadn't touched in years, the ones I stopped reading because he didn't think they were useful. I stopped asking permission for anything. There was no one left to ask. A few of my friends asked if I felt lonely. I didn't know how to explain it to them, that being unseen in a marriage is lonelier than any quiet evening spent alone. That now, when I spoke out loud, I knew someone was listening. Me. I started cooking again. Not meals that fed two, but meals that fed joy. Dishes I liked. Music I liked. Candles I lit just because I could. Every act of living became an act of ownership. Every corner of the house whispered, "You made it." One night, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom, just looking. The same walls, the same windows, but a different woman. A woman who had been erased on paper, and wrote herself back in. He thought I'd crumble when he took the money. He thought I was too soft, too polite, too emotional. He didn't realize that softness is not weakness. That sometimes, the quiet ones hold the sharpest blades. That sometimes, the most dangerous woman is the one who waits, learns, and then rewrites the ending. I didn't burn bridges. I bought the land they stood on. And I built a better life from the ashes.